Welcome to Phrase by Phrase, where we are studying the Bible one phrase at a time. And today we're looking at James chapter 2, verses 22 through 26, okay? James is talking about how faith and works go together. He's deep into that discussion. We've been going through that in previous studies. If you're just diving in, you might want to go back a few verses to catch the flow of his thought. But in verse 22, he says, "You see that faith was working through his works," meaning Abraham, "and as a result of the works, faith was perfected." Now, the word perfected here means to bring something to its conclusion or to bring it to fruition. So James is not saying here that faith is insufficient to save, but rather that saving faith has an intended goal, which is good works. Remember, this whole book is about marks of an authentic faith. And so he's driving home this theological point because he's saying that if your faith is real, it's going to show itself in the way you live. That's the whole point of this book. Edmund Hibert, a great theologian and commentator on the book of James, writes, "James is saying that the belief God accepted as a righteousness in Genesis 15, that's when God first called Abraham, we looked at that last time, must ultimately manifest itself in the unquestioning obedience described in Genesis 22, and that's when Abraham sacrificed Isaac." So in testing Abraham's faith, God brought into manifestation the reality of faith he knew was already there, and that's the kind of faith that God will receive. So in verse 23 says, "In the scripture which was fulfilled, which says, and Abraham believed God, and it was reckoned unto him as righteousness, and he was called the friend of God. You see that a man is justified by works and not by faith alone." And then James is going to build his point by making another biblical example. In verse 25, he says, "In the same way," so he's going to compare these two people, "was not Rahab the harlot also justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out another way? For just as the body without the spirit is dead, so also faith without works is dead." So James introduces us to Rahab, who is about as opposite as Abraham as anybody can get. He's a man, she's a woman, he's a Jew, she was a Gentile, he was a patriarch, she was a prostitute, and yet she too was saved by faith. And that faith expressed itself through works. John Calvin wrote these words. He said, "He designedly put together two persons so different in their character in order more clearly to show that no one, whatever may have been his or her condition, nation, or class in society, has ever been counted righteous without good works." That's coming from John Calvin. So anybody that has real faith is going to have, that's going to be manifested in works in their life. And so Calvin did not say that they were made righteous by their good works, but rather they were accounted righteous. In other words, they were made righteous by faith, but we demonstrate the reality of that righteousness by good works. And then James's final resolution really ends where he began this whole discussion. He finishes up this section by saying faith without works is dead. And so I would ask, has your faith in Jesus Christ changed the way you live? You think about that. And we'll see you next time as we study the Bible together, phrase by phrase.